What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today it's all gonna hear, and we're gonna be reacting to the rest of the video. This is part two to Transphobia and Analysis by vtuber reaction. This is part two to that video. I'm finally coming out with part two, so let's see if I can remember what this is. Okay.
Another thing to do this when we're talking about people who are in the room, people trying and succeeding to philosophize themselves.
I think I already responded to this one in the last part, so I'm not gonna say anything on this.
Because I'm cis and therefore I don't face transphobic violence, it's an element of this discussion that I'm probably inadvertently going to...
Like, what do you mean by violence? Because a lot of people like to seem to use violence at, like, they'll say silence is violence. They'll say speech is violence. So basically whatever you do, you're being violent unless you agree with them. So, I mean, what is it here? What is violence here? I would like to know. I mean, I know there is quite actual violence to trans people. I'm sure there is. It's just a lot of people will say if you disagree with them, they'll say that if you don't want to use their pronouns, it's violence, or if you stay silent on certain issues and don't advocate in some other things, it's violence. So kind of mixed signals here. But anyway, I'm not saying that's what he's saying. I'm just saying, Let's continue.
End up downplaying. So remember those sources below. I know that when I imagine a bigot, I picture like a skinhead shouting in the street, and a fair bit of that does go on, but some transphobes will also cloak their bigotry in academic language, and in particular in the language of feminism. Hence the acronym Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminists, or...
I see the effects there, or I hear the effects there, the far effects. Haha, very funny philosophy tube. Haha, very funny. Yeah, I show myself as the smart, big Chad Wojak, and I show you as the soy boy nerd Wojak, so I win, haha. It's the same tactics, bro. But anyway, trans exclusionary radical feminist. Well, first of all, are you saying that if you believe that if you're a feminist and you don't think of a person who says they're a woman just because they say they are, just don't believe that makes them a woman, you think that's bigotry? You think that's transphobia? You think that's bigotry? If you think that's bigotry, well, boys, does history have a world to show you? Oh my goodness. Germany, Russia, like back in 1940s, communist Red Scare. I guess maybe not Red Scare, sorry, but more like communist Russia, my bad. But yeah, you got something to learn there. You got something to learn about history when it comes to actual bigotry. Anyway.
TERFs, the academic feminist subset of transphobes. One transphobic academic whose work...
So are you saying, okay, so academic, some of transphobes, does that mean like all of them are transphobes? So are you saying that literally anyone who disagrees with you on this issue is a transphobe, and therefore they hate you, and they irrationally hate you, they irrationally fear you, because they don't agree with your opinion? Like, doesn't that sound in itself bigoted to imply? Like, okay, if you don't agree with me, you're a bad person. Isn't that bigoted? Wouldn't that be bigoted? Wouldn't you think?
Work you may encounter is Ray Blanchard, who's already been thoroughly debunked by sharper minds than mine. More recently, though, in 2014, philosopher Sheila Jeffreys wrote a provocative and controversial book called...
Hold on, let's see it. Let's see that.
14, philosopher Sheila Jeffreys wrote a provocative and
controversial book, offers a feminist perspective to transgenderism.
Book called Gender Hurts. Among other things, Jeffreys falsely claims that the existence of trans people would erase lesbians and gay men, since if a gay man could be attracted to somebody with a vagina, or a lesbian could be attracted to somebody with a penis, then she says, wrongly, those categories must have broken down. Again, here we see the metaphysical denial at work. Transphobes today are sidelining metaphysics in order to focus on this question, how do you know? Which we can keep posing again and again forever, like a kid in the backseat of a car going, why? But why? But why?
Well, yeah, they're going to keep asking. You know why they keep going that? Because you never answer. You're like, well, at least for Philosophy Tube, he seems to go, well, how dare you question my identity? How dare you question these people's identities? How dare you, my identity isn't up for debate, as I think he said earlier in the video. basically, yeah, people are gonna ask you why, especially if you're gonna get mad at them for not using the pronouns you want them to use, and then proceed to not explain to them why they should even agree with you, or why they should even do that. If you're gonna call someone bigoted, you should at least be able to explain why they're a bigot, and explain why your side is right, instead of just calling them a bigot because they disagree.
For eternity. Jeffries refuses the metaphysical truth that some women have penises and
wouldn't that also be a slippery slope fallacy? I don't know.
some men have vaginas, in order to focus on this question: how do you know that someone is a lesbian? Okay, how do you know that? How do you know that?
Writing many centuries after the ancient skeptics, Scottish philosopher David Hume said that skepticism is a bit like...
What even is that? What even is that, bro? No offense to philosophy too. It's fine if you want to eat that. I don't know what that is. Like, somebody comments, please tell me what that is. I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Coleslaw. A little bit is okay, but would you want to eat a meal that's just coleslaw? Hume thought that nobody could maintain this
it's coleslaw. Okay, it's coleslaw.
Kind of skepticism forever about everything. You can ask yourself, how do I know my teeth really exist? But as soon as you bite into a sandwich, you can't help but believe in their metaphysical reality. Someone could explore their sexuality by considering the a priori concepts of straight, gay, bisexual, pansexual, and what those mean. Or more likely, they'll explore those things by actually living and finding out that way, because there are...
Okay, are you saying that if you just feel like a woman, you'll know if you feel like a woman, you'll know if you're trans, but if you're not trans, you can't know, but you can figure out if someone's trans if you experience being trans? Okay. Well then, I mean, how do we know you're not lying though? Because someone could just say they're trans and lie about it. There's no safeguards to protect if someone wants to go to the bathroom for the opposite sex and say, well, actually, I identify as a woman, so I want to go in the woman's bathroom, and it's some big buff dude that just says they are. Like, how do you know that they actually identify? How do you know what they're thinking? You can't. You have to trust them at their word. And that's one of the things that a lot of, I think, feminists are concerned about, is men going to women's bathrooms and such. And I think these are, like, can be decently valid concerns, right? But they're often called bigoted for some reason. But anyway, back to the point. So you'll know when you experience it. Well, okay. Well, that's not much of an explanation. It's not gonna really help in a debate or anything about how do you know if someone can be trans. I mean, if the feeling is undefined, you have to have, like, even happy has probably, like, a definition, the word happy, right? Even that has a definition. So I'm sure you can give a definition to woman or man or transgender, right? I'm sure you can give a definition to gender. I'm sure you can give a definition to those things. So therefore you can know if you are one of those things. I'm sure it's possible without just having to experience it.
More things in heaven and earth, Jeffries, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. The great subverter of Pyrrhonism, or the excessive principles of skepticism, is action and employment, and the occupations of common life. These principles may flourish and triumph in the schools, where it is indeed difficult, if not impossible, to refute them, but as soon as they leave the shade, and by the presence of the real objects which actuate our passions and sentiments, are put in opposition to the more powerful principles of our nature, they vanish like smoke, and leave the most determined skeptic in the same condition as other mortals. For here is the chief and most confounding objection to excessive skepticism, that no durable good can ever result from it, while it remains in its full force and vigour. We need only ask such a skeptic what his meaning is, and what he proposes by all these curious researches. What the f*** is all this coleslaw doing on my plate?
Hume raises an interesting question, though. What are transphobes trying to achieve with all of...
We're trying to achieve a definition for the word woman that you probably don't want to tell us. For whatever reason. You'll call us transphobe if we ask you, what is a woman? Why do we want to know what a woman is? Why do we want to know? Because it matters. Because if you're going to claim something that's not true, if you're going to claim something and then not provide any evidence for it and expect me to adhere to what you have to say, if you want me to adhere and accept your pronouns or accept your view of reality as true, you better be able to prove it. That's what the skeptics are probably trying to say here, I'd imagine. I mean, I don't think they just want to berate you for no reason. It's because you're like, a lot of people, or I'm not maybe saying like philosophy tube is doing this, but a lot of people will just say, well, you have to use my pronouns. I'm like, and you might be like, well, why? I mean, I don't believe that that's the reality. And then they'll call you like a transphobe. It's like, well, what's your reason for constantly denying an answer to a simple question, or a question that you should be able to answer, since, you know, if you identify as a woman, then you should know what a woman is if you're identifying as it, because, you know, or at least have some idea of what it means to be a woman.
Of this hardline skepticism. Why, in the potluck of life, are they only bringing industrial amounts of the blandest possible coleslaw? Well, beyond just garden variety bigotry, one theoretical explanation might be that once we realise trans people exist, and therefore must be legally acknowledged to exist, we can start having more interesting conversations, like...
Well, you gotta prove that first if you want the entire legal system to bend to your will. You better at least prove that you exist in the way you say you are, if you want, like actual government officials to trust what you're saying. To trust that, you know, to actually go along with your ideology, you have to prove your ideology first. Like, come on, like, isn't that, like, common sense?
What can we do about the fact that a lot of trans people don't have access to the healthcare they need? What can we do about the fact that
What do you mean healthcare? You mean like the quote-unquote gender-affirming care that's like, okay, you can chop off your private parts and then and get them turned into new ones? Like, is that the care? Is that healthcare? Or is that just... I mean, do you consider, like, plastic surgery to get a bigger chest, or a Brazilian butt lift to get a bigger butt because you want to have one? Is that healthcare, or is that like... Or is that just like a commodity? Why do you even want to look like a different gender anyway? I mean, a lot of people say gender is a social construct. Then why change your physical body if it has nothing to do with your sex? I mean, it has nothing to do with it then.
Of trans people are disproportionately more likely to be refused jobs. Once we acknowledge that people exist, then we can have a conversation about material access to their human rights.
Well, I mean, I don't know if them will. I would hope that he would have actual proof, like, you know, statistics, like, about if trans people don't get jobs because they're trans. If they don't get jobs because they're trans, I think that's sad. I think they should still be able to get jobs. Obviously, I'm for equality here. I just don't believe that you can be I don't believe that you can be the opposite gender. That's all I'm saying here.
But as long as the debate don't stop and the metaphysical skepticism is maintained, all those questions get delayed. We never get to them. As long as the music keeps playing, no one gets to sit down. And transphobes at least get the peace of mind of not having to sit next to somebody they don't like. But...
Bro, you're literally the one saying, if you don't agree with me, you're a bad person. What are you talking about? Is this... What?
In his letter from a Birmingham jail, Martin Luther King makes an interesting distinction between the negative peace, which is the absence of tension, and the positive peace, which is the presence of justice. One thing Betcher highlights is that regardless of the metaphysics, the kind of violence and exclusion that trans people face wouldn't be justified either way. And I don't want to paint an overly civilized picture of the transphobic position here. Frequently they do not pose their arguments in polite, academic, good faith terms.
You don't seem like you're doing that either, dude. Like, come on. Like, come on, dude. Like, are you putting it in good faith? Because you said that first of all, you're wrong, and that you don't even have to prove your position. Like, first of all, you don't even want to debate. If it was good faith, you probably wouldn't debate. Even if it wasn't good faith, according to what you've said in this video.
To remain within the City of London and within recent memory, in July of this year there was an incident where a bunch of transphobes forced their way to the front of the Pride Parade in order to distribute transphobic leaflets to the public. There's an
Well, the transphobic, what do they say? I mean, if no one can see the leaflets, then no one knows if it's really transphobic, so you're just going to have to take your word for it.
Ongoing campaign at time of recording to try and get the City of London Corporation to ban trans people from certain public spaces. There's been fighting in high...
You mean like women's bathrooms? Or you mean like the opposite sex bathrooms? Because you haven't proved your point that you can even be the opposite gender to even go into a different bathroom, because the things have been the way they are for like a long time. And then now you suddenly want to change these things so radically, and now you expect everyone else to be able to just deal with it and just shut up and not talk about it because otherwise they're a bad person if they have anything to say against your new quote-unquote progress. What?
Park, a bunch of transphobes are putting up transphobic stickers around the place to try and make trans women in particular feel unwelcome, and also make your dad feel like maybe he doesn't have to get rid of that spore after all.
Feel unwelcome, bro. bro, aren't you the one saying you're a bad person if you disagree with me? How is that supposed to make anyone else feel welcome? I guess you don't really care if it's the opposite. If people don't agree with you, huh? If they agree with you, sure they can feel welcome with, because everyone should feel welcome on your side. But if they agree with your side, but if they disagree, I'm sure it shouldn't be the same way, right? I mean, obviously it shouldn't be the same way. I mean, or so it seems that would be implied that would probably happen if we went with the logic here.
This is not Bertrand Russell and Ludwig Wittgenstein knocking back pints on the banks of the river in Cambridge and talking about philosophy, right? This is street philosophy, and it gets dirty because it's life and death.
Life and death? What do you mean life and death, bro? How is not letting a person who wants to go in a women's bathroom that's not the sex that's supposed to be there, life or death? Like, that's kind of exaggerating, don't you think? Probably to get fear-mongering, probably to fear-monger, so people actually go, oh my gosh, I'm in danger, I'm being threatened. You just want to get people riled up. I mean, come on.
There's one last instance of the metaphysics to epistemology shuffle that it's worth talking about, and it's going to lead us to our, not conclusion, but our to be continued. Some transphobes will be heard to say, just because somebody identifies as one thing doesn't make it so. And there are sophisticated and unsophisticated versions of this argument. Jeffries uses one version, but so do all of the I identify as an attack helicopter memes that you'll see floating around the internet.
This argument is an attack on a particular view of gender known as performativism. The idea is that some statements are performative. They not only say something, but also do the thing they say at the same time. Like saying I promise is not just signalling that you give your word, but is in fact the act of giving your word. Or saying I do at a wedding. By saying it, you're performing the action. Similarly, some thinkers have suggested that gender might work in a similar way. By saying and doing your gender, you make it so.
When
Well, no, I think it's more like an attack on, like, okay, you have, like, I am who I say I am, and you can't prove, and you can't prove me wrong, and you're gonna have to listen, and obey what I say, even though I can't prove what I am, because I just feel this way, and it just doesn't make sense. It's a circular argument when you say I am a woman because I feel like a woman, and I feel like a woman because I am a woman. That's just a circular argument. It doesn't work. Which is why, which is probably might be where that argument come from.
transphobes say identifying as one gender doesn't make it so, that's an attack on performativism. But here's what they miss. Not every trans person believes that gender performativism is a good theory, and it doesn't have to be true for trans rights to be worth taking seriously. The skeptic's question is, how do you know you're the gender you say you are? What makes you that gender? And when asked in good faith, i.e. not by transphobes, that's actually a pretty interesting question for all of us. To which different cis and trans people will give you different answers.
Are you saying that if you're a transphobe, if it's not asked by a transphobe, someone who actually disagrees with you, because we've discovered in this video, then if it's asked by someone who already agrees with you and asks you this question, it's fine. But if it's asked by someone who disagrees with you, doesn't believe you so far, then they're a bad person, and then it's like it's not a good faith answer. Interesting. Maybe I could be taking things wrong here, but just let me know in the comments below if I'm taking anything wrong. And I'm sorry for speaking really fast. I'm going to try to slow down. I'm going to try to speak more clearly, and then I'm going to slow down. Okay, here we go.
A strict performativist might say that a trans man who used to perform womanhood was a woman and then changed gender when they changed performance. Somebody else might say that no, actually he was a man his whole life and just took some time to realize it. Somebody else might say that acting as if one or other theory of gender is true would be better from the point of view of trying to legally, politically secure trans people's rights. Betcher actually thinks that the answer to the question, what makes you the gender you are, can be different in different contexts. When the transphobe says identifying as one thing doesn't make it so and dusts their hands and walks away like that's the end of the story, they're making two mistakes. Firstly, they're kind of reducing performativism to just speech acts, saying I identify as this, whereas all sorts of other things might come under a more robust definition of the word.
Look, I think they're trying to get a definition. Like, what does it mean to be the gender that you say you are? Like, what does it mean to feel like a woman? What does that mean? What significance does that hold? So that I must use your pronouns. Like, what? Like, how can you be something? Like, how? if you get what I'm saying, you know, like, how can you be the thing you say you are, or how can you be the thing you say you are when that thing you haven't defined it, and when that thing is just a feeling? How can you be that? Like, how can we know that you are that, or how can you even know that you are that? Like, how can you feel like a woman? What does it mean to feel like a woman? What does it feel like? Because even, I'm sure, happy, like I said, has a definition.
Word performance, like how you interact with other people, the way you live. There's lots of different kinds of performance, and spoken word isn't the only one. Secondly, and crucially, they're missing the fact that gender performativism isn't the only theory of gender on the table. Betcher points out that trans scholars, both within and without academia, have been engaging with this question of what makes you the gender you are for about 50 years. And despite the claims of a lot of transphobes that this is the discussion they don't want you to have, or this discussion is politically correct.
Okay. I wonder how many times PhilosophyTube has said transphobe in this video. Transphobia, transphobe. How many? I know it's called transphobia and analysis, but like, come on. I think he may also say this in other videos too. He might say that word a lot, but let's see here.
Correct and is being censored. It's been going on a long time. And Betcher laments that a lot of transphobes show a total ignorance of the history of trans scholarship on this question, which might provide some interesting answers if they were to engage in good faith, rather than in the spirit of total metaphysical skepticism. So, for the sake of argument, we could actually grant that yes, the act of identifying as a particular gender is not what causally makes that statement true. It might turn out that strict gender performativism is false, but all that's needed for the project of advancing trans rights is for us to realize that self-identification statements about gender made by trans people can be true. What exactly it is that makes them true, ask 3 scholars and you'll get 4 opinions. But the fact that they can be true means that the onus is on the rest of us, cis people, to take statements like that morally, legally, politically, practically, personally, very, very seriously.
Special thanks to Casey Explosion, Riley J. Dennis, and Natalie Wynn for working with me on the script for this video. You can find links to their work and the work of several other
But also, like, I mean, sure, I'll take it seriously. I'll ask you that if me taking it seriously is me asking you, how do you know? Like, like, what is a woman? If you want to be a woman, what makes you a woman? Is it a feeling? And if it's a feeling, then what feeling makes you a woman? Because you can't just be like, oh, I feel like a woman. Well, what does a woman feel like? You know. And then, for example, there's actually not for example, but there's another thing that's like, the I can't speak right now. Performativism. There we go. Like, basically, a woman is someone who acts like a woman. A woman is someone who acts feminine. A woman is someone who does the things that the female sex was supposed to do, or is viewed as supposed to like that. Then there's that one, and then I'm sure there's others.
And creators below, including free links to all of the sources by Talia Betcher cited in today's episode.
Okay, that's just the whole bit. That's the whole video. Anyway, guys, if you liked the video, please like and subscribe and comment down below what you think. I would love to hear what you think, if I did a good job responding, or if I could use some work. Let me know what you think. Is PhilosophyTube correct or incorrect on on his points, and if either one, which ones? Thank you guys so much for watching, and peace out. I'll get night out. Bye.